Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Shed Geek Podcast. Here with Justin today. And Justin, you want to introduce yourself to the audience, a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be here. I've been listening to the pod for a while now, and so I'm excited to be part of it. My name is Justin Lepage. I kind of came into the industry a couple years ago. Stay-at-home storage is the rent-to-own company I worked for. My brother-in-law actually worked there for a while, and we had been talking and understood there was some kind of things they could use another hand on. So I approached them and offered to kind of help them out on a part-time basis, mainly focusing on the repossession management side of the company, just kind of making sure everything was being kept track of. So I kind of started doing that on a part-time basis a couple years ago. I really enjoyed it, but then kind of over the years, just kind of scaled up with them, started taking on more responsibilities, and just this past year kind of shifted into a full-time role with them, just kind of overall general account management, and it's been great.
Well, that's good, man. We're in Newport, Kentucky. Is where we are, and a lot of people may remember this as a few years ago as a home in Covington Covington right here nearby as one of the shed shows was here, where you're staring right at the Cincinnati skyline, basically. So it's very cool. I got to get up this way and called my buddy Darren last night and was hoping to meet up with him and get dinner. And man, he's so busy. Everybody seems to be busy right now. He's putting up play sets and basketball poles and goals and all that stuff. And just craziness. So we met, some time ago. Had a chance to sit down and have lunch with you, and it's been probably a year in the making.
At least, yeah.
Feels like. But stay-at-home storage, I want to I'll tell you what, let's start there. Sure. Let's start with your personal story. Okay. I love that. You were born in St. Louis.
Yeah, so I was born in St. Louis, Missouri. Don't remember a whole lot of my time there, at least as a child, because we moved, when I was 4 years old, we moved to a small northern Ontario town called Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, just at the very top of Michigan, all the way up through the Upper Peninsula. Mm-hmm. Very beautiful country up there. Miss it. But I grew up there, for the main part of my childhood until I came to Cincinnati for college. Went to a small Bible college called God's Bible School and College. Was there for 2 years, just kind of taking some general study classes and some different ministerial and Bible classes. And then I transferred to Xavier University here in Cincinnati as well, and finished out my college with a finance degree from them.
Excellent. So you told me earlier that you had a finance degree, so, it just seems like it makes sense for you to
It does, It definitely parlayed quite well into kind of what I do for the rent-to-own company. And before this, my primary jobs had been in payroll for different companies, so that worked out well. But I definitely have lots of experience and at least head knowledge to kind of parlay into what I do now. So it's been good.
I bet no college professor warned you for the rent-to-own world.
Trust me, I never heard of it. It was definitely a fresh start when at least I was acquainted with my brother-in-law when I married my wife and kind of started learning what he does. And I hadn't heard a bit about it for sure.
You could go back and teach that professor probably
I'm sure I could
a few things in classes. So there's probably a lot they could stand to learn from it. Yep. So you moved here, met your
met my wife at the Bible college. Got married in 2019, so going on 4 years here, I think this June. So And
you have this beautiful little place here in Newport that's just so convenient to downtown.
Yeah, it's been great so far. Just a cute little apartment just across the street from kind of the waterfront overlooking the Cincinnati skyline. So we've enjoyed it.
Yeah, very nice. I don't know. There's a certain charm about it that is just sort of appealing, and so that's cool, man. Like your story, your dad. So you you just had a little one, so that's exciting stuff.
Little girl, 8 months old.
Yeah. So let's talk about how that transitioned into stay-at-home storage. So stay-at-home, you guys service. It's more territorial.
Primarily, I mean, it's pretty much what we have set up yet. We are certainly not opposed. We're looking to grow and acquire new partnerships and new territories if that's what comes. But right now we are primarily set up in kind of the northeastern and southeastern states. From New York through Indiana down through the Carolinas and Georgia. That's where we're set up now. So, but we're looking to grow and
looking to do more.
Yeah,
always looking for more partnership. Well, the shed industry is a robust and growing industry, absolutely. It seems. So it seems as though there's more pie out there, for everybody to go get a bite of anymore. I can't believe the way it continues to break through these glass ceilings, but everybody talks about the bubble when it'll bust, and I think it's probably more related to economics than it is what we do. I mean, the portable storage, I think, has a lot of life in it just because of the self-storage, and self-storage is so big. It's so prevalent, and in some ways it's our competition when you think of traditional storage.
Yeah, I was just talking about this to my partner Josh, the other partner of the company. I was just talking about how, I have a great outlook on the portable building industry, because in comparison to self-storage, like you said, it's just huge and growing right now, and there's just tons of venture capitalist backed projects and firms and everything like that, and it's really just great comparison to the portable buildings, where we may not even have a lot of venture capitalist backed companies and stuff, and I don't know if we'll ever get to that, but it just kind of goes to show that we're not really going anywhere anytime soon, because everyone's going to need storage in one way or the other, whether it's a self-storage or a shed in their backyard.
Yeah, Americans like their extra things, and they need a place to put those extra things. And there's sort of a movement, newer generations move toward a minimalistic approach, but also rental approach as opposed to ownership. They prefer. Yeah. They don't want to be locked down, tied down. So, rent is kind of on the rise for new generations. So a mixture of all of those things, but I like that we service all the industry. I always say we service the minimalistic crowd, in the sense of there are manufacturers producing tiny homes for someone who wants to live minimally, but then there's also sheds, and very large sheds. Yeah. For people who have things and need a place to store them. Tell me a little bit about Stay at Home. How did sort of the foundation of that come together?
Yeah, so the managing partner, Titus, he actually started out at a sales lot up in northern Pennsylvania, about an hour or so north of Pittsburgh. He was doing that for a while, and I think I have this straight. I think he acquired a small rent-owned company, or at least a batch of contracts, and just kind of shuffled that into his company, and just kind of started to kind of shift past. And that was probably, 7 or 8 years ago now. And he's been doing rent-own ever since. And then stay-home storage, it was the name of his lot, so he just kind of parlayed that in the rent-own, and I think works out quite well.
Worked out perfect. And then as they saw growth, you entered that space.
Yeah, my brother-in-law, as I mentioned before, Josh, he started quite a ways before me, just kind of helping the overall operations of the company, and I joined them a couple years back now, and yeah, scales, like I said.
What's been your experience in the rent-to-own world, coming from especially like a payroll, traditional finance job, I guess you would say, career in some ways? What's been kind of, I don't know, some of the shocking things? What's been surprising to you? What's been your experience?
Yeah, so there's been a lot. I mean, so I was in payroll. It's more of a kind of a corporate focused, kind of internal employee centered role. So you could say I didn't have a lot of experience with a kind of outward customer service oriented role where I'm speaking with customers of the company. So just having to deal with a lot of that, and with my primary focus being repossession management, I'm in conversation with a lot of the delinquent customers. So that has been interesting to say the least. The conversations that come up.
I'm sure.
And then kind of just apart from that, also just even the overall structure of a small company definitely has its pros, but again, coming from a large corporate role, there's been some things to get used to as far as just different processes that aren't in place and things like that. So a lot of good, but also a lot of things that you could say I'm interested in trying to kind of help adjust.
Sometimes you take for granted those processes, especially in the larger companies, to realize that they were built over time and pressure.
Yeah.
Things happen, created a process. It's not always the best process, but create something to combat the negative effect of whatever you felt. And I always say discipline is the thing that exists when motivation is no longer present. And discipline is your processes.
Yeah.
Why do I get up and go to work every day? Because I have a family, because I have, mouths to feed. So it doesn't matter if I'm not motivated or don't feel like it, I'm disciplined to get up and do that. And that's what the processes, I think, create.
Yeah.
It creates that discipline.
Yep.
You're a big process guy. You like the idea of moving into more automation, more software. What do you think do you think that's specific to the shed industry or specific to the rent-to-own sector of the shed industry?
Honestly, I see from a limited experience given, I've only been kind of in the space for a couple of years now. I'll admit that. So I don't want to sound like I know it all. It's coming in trying to disrupt everything. But
sure.
I think I see a lot of gaps across the board. I like to see, I see a lot of, looks like innovation in the kind of like the dealership sales side, kind of the 3D configurators, kind of dealer management applications that are coming up. So I like to see that. I think a lot of that will help that kind of sales side of the industry. And then there's things like shedforsale.com and Shed Hub that help with the marketing, and I think those are great. I love to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's good to see. There's probably still some areas that could use a product, but then kind of moving into rent to own. I think there's definitely a big space there for a new, pretty much as a new system in general for kind of rent to own management. We've, like I think probably many others, are using RTO Pro, and that has its limitations, you could say. So I would like to someday see someone or myself, who knows, perhaps develop. And I know I've seen RTO Smart. I think they're off to a great start, and I like to see them trying to kind of disrupt that. And I think hopefully they continue to build a great product that might compete with RTO Smart. That would be fantastic to see. So I like to see stuff like that. And there's probably some other spaces we could talk about.
Are you looking for ways to grow your business? Hi there, I'm Chad P. Wilson with NBC and Foundation Bank, and we've been helping small businesses in the shed industry for 33 years. Now in that time, we've helped haulers buy new mules and trailers. We've made it possible for manufacturers and dealers to participate in their own rent-to-own, and have streamlined the manufacturing and sales process with our Insight software. Contact Chuck Robinson to learn more by visiting our website at foundationbank.org. NBC and Foundation Bank are a member FDIC.
Competition sort of drives that, invention, so to speak. It's not always a bad thing. Even iron sharpens iron, the word tells us. So it's good to get around and talk and speak about all these different things. Some of these companies have served the industry for a long time and done a good job doing so. But you find that change and new things are necessary as you move forward. And I really love the word that you're kind of using there to coin that as a disruption, sort of a disruption to the industry. And that's not to be set with a negative connotation. Right. It's more a disruption in a good way that would stir us to do better or to do more, to create.
Yeah, you never want to be complacent. A lot of these companies they probably were on the cutting edge 10, 15 years ago of new technology. We just might be seeing some, complacency and just lack of innovation and change that is now kind of more leads them now to be more archaic, you could say.
Change is inevitable. I heard a pastor one time talking about a new song that they put into the praise and worship church, and he said there was a time where Amazing Grace was a new and it was a new song and not necessarily welcomed to the table. So it's kind of funny. He used to tell the joke about the ham. I don't know if you've ever heard this.
I don't think so.
Says they're cooking Christmas dinner, and this lady asked her mom while she's there. She says, "Why do we always cut the ends off the ham to before we fix it?" And she said, I don't know. It's the way my mom taught me. And honestly, I never really thought about it. I said, well, I just remember growing up around Christmas, you always, slice off the end of each ham, put it in there. It's become something I've done because I thought that was what it took to prepare it. They said, I don't know. Let's call your grandma. Let's see what she thinks. And they do, and they say, what's the meaning behind this? What's the story behind this? She's doing it because I do it, and I do it because you've just always done that. And she starts laughing, and she said, honey, we just didn't have a pan big enough to fit the ham. So that's just the way we had to do it. Yeah. And because that's the way they learned, and there can be some of that in conservatism, and you try to match that with your biblical principles and things of that nature, and say, where can I create? But I mean, I still believe that God's a creator at heart, and if we're made in His image, we're meant to create. So creation's not a bad thing, to create new ideas, new projects, new automations, processes, whatever it is in our life, in our job, in our work. All those things are neat, and I love the people who are trying to do those things because it excites me to see those new ideas. What are your thoughts? What are some of the things from you handle repos, you handle, customers that are delinquent? What are some things that you think without telling us a program, or if you've got anything in mind, what are some things that you think would help you in that process?
Yeah, so, in the repossession side of the business, for one, we struggle with just a timely, driver schedule, being able to pick up our buildings, and that comes from a various number of reasons, and kind of different processes that have been put in place. But I think there is a huge lack of, you could say, like, systems that can aid in that process. I would like to see some sort of, you could almost call it like an Uber for repossessions. Just we could just upload a pickup order to a database, and that goes out to a ton of drivers in that area, and they elect to do the job or not. And I think there might be some stuff like this that are trying to pick up, but I haven't seen anything that really looks adequate to use yet. So I'd like to see something like that, something that kind of pulls all of it together. Repossession for the rent-to-own companies, even deliveries for sale lots, can just upload pickup orders and drivers choose them or not. So I'd love to see something like that would just kind of aid in the whole hauling process, I think.
Transportation is tricky. I mean, at times, it's the one thing about our industry that's unique is that you can just deliver that shed right to their backyard. Mm-hmm. You can go pick it up. Do you run into, with delinquency, do you run into that a lot? When I was growing up, I saw parents struggle to pay bills mm-hmm. because oftentimes it would be financial decisions that might not have been, made the best, or life events that would happen. How do you approach that from an RTO perspective?
We are pretty gracious. We try to really work with the customer as much as possible, understand their story, their situation, and pretty quickly you're able to tell what's real and what's fake. So we try to make that judgment when we're having numerous conversations with delinquent customers, up into the, starting from the point of past due to through delinquency, through being scheduled for repossession, and we try to make that judgment call as far as is this a customer that we can maybe continue to work with, allow them to make partial or maybe start their account back up for with just a smaller payment that we might usually require. And then we have those customers that you can tell they're not going to be, if you give them another chance, they're going to be right back in the same situation in 3 months. So it's something we try to handle with grace and understanding. But there are those times where you just kind of have to lay down the law, you could say, and do the hard thing.
Yeah, it's unique. It's interesting, right? Whenever you're talking about collecting payments, I didn't realize there was a whole sector of the world that didn't pay their bills. Mm-hmm. We've just always done whatever it took to pay our bills. We work second jobs. We struggle. We make better financial decisions. Learn not to do those things. We may not, ever get rich saving money, mm-hmm. Because there's only so much to make. But we've been disciplined.
Yep.
And attempted to be disciplined in what we have spent. And it seems like there's I know a lot of people say it's not my job to educate the customer on their bills. And I don't know. I've always taken that as sort of a personal responsibility mm-hmm. of mine to try and give the best information as possible to help you try to eliminate that.
Yeah.
With that said, and I know that you can give the best advice ever, and it'll never be met.
Yeah, usually falls on deaf ears. I've been tempted to, and maybe even started to turn into a Dave Ramsey on the phone sometimes with these customers. Some of the decisions that they're telling me about that they've made instead of making their shed payments. It's hard to not advise them in a certain direction for their future decisions, but it's you can only,
especially a finance guy,
right? Yeah,
I mean, you're a finance guy. It's got to be tough.
It's
right?
going to be tough, but I mean, you can only say so much, and for the majority of it, it's probably not going to be heard well.
Yeah, no, I've unfortunately I've been in that situation. What do you think to disrupt? So to me, competition's so thick mm-hmm. in rent-to-own right now. I find it kind of interesting, to hear that you're not necessarily aggressively approaching business, but thoughtfully, mm-hmm. Approaching business, even hence being on the podcast and mentioning it. But you're not just beating the road, knocking on doors, trying to get anybody and everybody to sign up, specifically for rent-own. But it seems that it's very competitive. It's very thick.
Yeah. I mean, it is, from what I can tell, rent-to-own is very saturated right now. There's tons of great companies out there that are offering it, and I'd say the vast majority of sales lots have a partnership that they have signed up with. I mean, we very rarely come across one in our outreach efforts that does not already have some sort of rent-to-own offering. There's been a few, which are great. We are lucky to partner with those, and we're happy to. And if there's any lots that would like to offer, we are more than happy to supply that for them. But yeah, it is very saturated right now.
So what do you think is the key there? Is it to offer something unique? Do you think that companies would just be selling portfolios in order to try to, I don't want to say limit the competition, but you change supply and demand pretty dramatically as companies start to buy portfolios and companies go away and other companies take a larger piece of the share. I don't know. What's your thoughts? What should happen? What would be the disruption that Justin would paint if he could paint the picture?
I don't know. I've had a lot of thought on this, and I don't know. My experience might be a limiting factor, but sometimes I've been confused as to why we even have kind of the exclusivity when it comes to dealership and rent-to-own partner agreements. I don't think you really see that a lot in other industries where a finance product or finance service is offered to like a retail product offering. For example, car dealerships, they work with several, lots of different banks to try to find the best rate for each customer. And I don't think that can be, I don't think we can be compared, perfectly with a traditional financing bank per se. But I mean, I think there could be some of that could be adopted in the rent-to-own offerings for sheds when it comes to dealerships and who they partner with. I don't know. Curious to hear what your thoughts on that are.
Would you feel that way if you were the largest rent-to-own provider?
Probably not.
Just teasing. No, I like your thoughts on it for sure. And I agree with you. Traditional finance kind of walks the line a bit with similarity, even though it's completely different because we're in rent. Right. Everything falls under APRO or whatever, and it's not, the state statutes and,
right.
Not necessarily everything is similar to traditional finance, but the customer still sees you as, there's, it was disappointing to, like, a lot of customers would come in and they would be looking to, they would talk about as they were purchasing it, how it would help their credit. And you kind of realize that, like, wow, like there was an educational opportunity here.
Yeah. Because
people didn't understand that, like, this is not going to help your credit. This is not going to hurt your credit. That's why there's no credit check, in rent to own. It's not regulated in the same way. And I think that's why the emergence of things like the NBSRA is to help, regulate or at least simulate our togetherness in the industry, because it had grown to a certain point to where, it would be good for us to come together to protect the industry. So I don't know. I wasn't there at the onset of it. I've attended a lot of the meetings since then and plan to be there this year. And I think it's great seeing what people like Jonathan have done with the program. He's a pretty stellar dude that just, wins, and that's pretty cool.
Hello, shed sellers. Let's take a moment to discuss the shed customer and meeting their expectations. I remember growing up in the neighborhood where a certain percentage of the houses had well-manicured lawns and well-manicured homes. These were the type of individuals who felt it was important to purchase a well-constructed home or vehicle, or maybe equipment to help maintain the quality of the item. As shed manufacturers, we seek to provide a well-built quality shed. We want the customer to feel satisfied that their hard-earned money has been well spent on a product that will last. At LuxGuard, we believe adding high-quality rubber flooring to your line of sheds makes sense to the customer and adds value the customer can appreciate. With each year, sheds are becoming more complex. The customizations we are seeing are virtually endless. LuxGuard not only gives a complimentary aesthetic appearance for their shed, but also protects the floor from spills and keeps cleanup simple. Offer your customer the customer service they seek with LuxGuard. At LuxGuard, we are committed to delivering exceptional customer service and innovative products to help our customers achieve their goals. We strive to meet the evolving needs of the customers. To speak with one of our ready-to-serve customer product specialists, simply call 336-468-4311. To see our product and view an installation video, just visit our website at luxguard.com. LuxGuard, the floor that lasts a lifetime.
And it is cool to see all the people come together. So what's hard for me is like when you come together in competition, like not everyone's coming together on the same level.
Right. Yeah.
and that's probably been the thing for me that has been the hardest to kind of get like acclimated to.
Sure.
You know, they'll come to the table to try and understand, but everyone has their own core competencies. Everyone has their competitive advantage. They have the things that they do and they leverage for, you know what I mean, for their for business plan. Yeah, I don't know, man. Asking you the question is kind of like if I had to answer it myself. Disruption-wise, well, I don't want to take too much of the mic, but me and you talked a couple of weeks ago, I think it was. I put a Facebook post out talking about dealer premiums.
Yeah.
You know, and I was kind of amazed at some of the responses, but even some of the responses in my inbox, you know, or, you know, people messaged me. One guy messaged me and said, "You get any strange boxes at your front doorstep or anything this week?" And we laughed about it, but we laughed about it because it was like, if the information isn't out there, how good of a decision can you make? I've always made my best decision when I've had the most information available to me,
Right.
in any capacity. But when I don't have good information, that's called ignorance, because I'm ignorant of it. I don't know that, and I've made some bad decisions also when I didn't know. And so I think we should talk about difficult questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would be absurd to me to think that we can't have hard conversations about things like dealer premiums or divisors because it's not proper etiquette.
Yeah, no, it's good to have open discussion. We might not all agree, but like you said, we're going to be better for it. We're going to learn from each other, take different opinions, and just take what we think is good and leave what we think is bad, and just all grow and be better for it.
Yeah, my conviction and my faith has been made stronger by the challenges that exist to it. Excuse me. So with, I don't know, with rent to own, maybe one area that me and you we discussed that is maybe a sensitive topic for some, but you have all these different types of structures of shed businesses, from wholesale to company owned, consignment, and typically speaking, it seems like a corporation who consigns will choose their rent-own company, and then there's some deep loyalty, or sometimes there's these premiums that are paid, and those premiums might come in different shapes. How do you identify them outside of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% kickback or percentage on paid on the contract? I know I went in going to the NBSRA. I've been hoping to interview Ed Wynn, who's obviously very well known in the industry. He's written a lot of contracts for shed companies, but he had mentioned, that he, at least on the stage there, that the dealer premiums weren't the path to success. Don't remember exactly how he said it, and I don't want to paraphrase and put words into his mouth, partly because he scares me. But
yeah, I mean, I've heard the same thing. I've heard it as a race to the bottom, and all the above. And I'm not sure really where we fall. I don't know if I have a strong conviction one way or the other. I like to hear all the opinions, and again, just try to adapt what I think is best. But yeah, it's interesting to see.
Well, you brought up a few points, with finance. That finance. I mean, it seems like Jonathan's doing that with backyard, you know, and the program that they did. And there's several other good companies out there that offer, that I'm aware of, you know, off the top of my head, that offer traditional finance programs, you know, RTO National and Newfound, and I'm sure there's several others. And I've heard Green Sky thrown around. I've heard some other names thrown around that don't also work in the rent-to-own space. But, yeah, I guess just for me, I think about when you start paying those premiums, like it's only going to increase, and it's just pulling from the yield, you know, and then those premiums might come in way of paying for software or paying for websites or even paying for inventory.
Sure.
You know, and I think that's where the loyalty part that you're talking about comes in. I think, one, there's an appreciation, but then I also think that there's a constraint. Whenever you agree to take something, you must do this, and so it doesn't exactly allow you to be open for business. And some people say, well, that's just a good business move, you know, on their part. And perhaps that's true. Traditional finance, that's usually not the case, right? And we keep saying traditional finance, and we're not traditional finance, so that's why we're different. But with traditional finance, you know, you would have a multitude of banks trying to compete for that money, that contract, that loan, that home loan. We just don't have that in rent.
We did not. You know, each shed has their rent-to-own partner that they offer, and really the customer doesn't have a say in you know, what product they're receiving. They don't really give, you know, a lot of information on what financing company they're going to be receiving their product from. You know, they're in the traditional financing spaces. A lot of times you can choose your financing before you even start searching for a product. You can look at interest rates. You can look at various other factors that contribute to a financing company's offerings, and that's really not given in the rent-to-own company space.
Yeah, competing interest rates. You bring up that point. You know, there's not really a very competitive divisor, or some people will call them factors, you know, that allow you to sort of get a better, you know, a better price, or at least a better long-term price. It's rent ultimately, so we're able to hide under the guise of the fact that it's a 36-month contract. It's rent all the way up until you pay your 36-month contract, and then it becomes ownership.
It's still a rental fee, though. I mean, if we compare it to just, you know, apartment rentals, you know, customers are, you know, they're gonna compare different rental prices from one apartment to another. When it comes to renting a shed for their backyard, they're not really easily able to do that.
Yeah, what's interesting is that it's, you know, assumed that there's no equity being built because it's rent at month 35, but at month 36, when you pay your payment, you acquire 100% equity. It's kind of interesting in the thought that you acquire the entire purchase. So that's why it works like traditional finance, and that's why customers who, unfortunately, aren't real educated on traditional finance even just liken the process to that. And I think that's why we have things like a large amount of repossessions or rental returns, I guess would be the proper etiquette. But, you know, I think that's why we get a lot of that. And then you get the instability in the market where you have too much product and not enough out there when you have something like COVID. And now we have this influx, and then we have all of these returns that are coming back at a different rate because of the spike in lumber. And now, you know, maybe not exactly accurate, but it seems as though buildings, if lumber's beginning to decrease now, are cheaper than buildings that are actually already been out on contract. In some cases, that's true. Yeah.
So would you, do you think you'd be interested in seeing like a lower divisor product offering within rent-to-own?
Oh gosh, if I open up this rabbit hole, I might as well jump all in and just hope that I don't get any of those strange boxes at my front doorstep. But I truly believe in trying to think through what I say, give the best advice, and then be open-minded to being educated. So if I'm not saying this in an educated way, rather than holler at the radio or into your phone right now, maybe educate me so that I understand it a little bit better. I'll admit that I don't have all the answers.
And that goes for me as well as I have these discussions.
But yeah, I do believe that if people would really dive into the idea of a more competitive divisor versus a traditional premium program, and that premium could be anything from purchasing website, paying for your software because you're a smaller company and might not be able to afford that, that software, or your lumber, that way you can get started. Obviously if it's weird because I've had people say, man, I don't know, I kind of wanted to get away from that rent-owned company because they kind of tell me what to do. And I'm like, well, they tell you what to do because they funded 90% of your inventory.
Right.
They own your company. You don't. You just do in theory. It's on paper. And that's sort of, I don't mean for that to be smart aleck. I'm just saying that can be kind of a negative side. With that being said, I need to look at the positive side of that, and that is that this company would be willing to assume that risk with you, who don't have any maybe experience in building sheds, and they're going to assume 90% of the cost. So there's a flip side to that too. So they're not to be demonized. Let's look at this fairly both ways.
Sure.
So my thought would be, obviously, I don't know, getting rid of the dealer premiums and maybe making a more competitive divisor. You're going to soak up sales in a particular region. Maybe not completely, but depending on how much you can affect the divisor. So that's kind of been something I've kicked around. I've told to a few people. I haven't got this written down on paper and the perfect process figured out just yet. But I think that it could be an opportunity. Sure. Or you could see something like rent to rent. I think you could see something like what we see at the backyard storage. I mean, essentially a portable building. I'm taking way too much mic time here.
No,
so
I love it.
Essentially a portable building is taking when you go to a storage unit, it's taking one of those storage units and separating it from the pack and sticking it in someone's yard. Yeah. So therefore, it stands to reason that if someone's willing to pay 6 years of rent and acquire no equity in that unit, that they should be able to do the same thing in the backyard portable building if you just offer simply a rental cost.
Yeah, and we've actually looked into that, and this might be something we eventually offer as we kind of work out the details on it. But it is interesting, and I'd be curious to how kind of a lot of the other processes that work with a rent-to-own structure, as far as even repossession and all that goes. It might look a little bit different than traditional rent-to-own, just from the fact that, again, like they're because when you have a rent-to-own, the customer feels as if they have ownership pretty much from day one. While they don't,
sure,
they do. So with rent-to-rent, renting that backyard structure with no anticipation of ownership, I think would create some kind of different, there's different relationships within the companies.
The transportation still is sort of a factor there. In a traditional storage unit, you don't pay your bill. They come after you a couple times, and then they auction off your stuff and they put it back up for sale. You're still going to have you're still going to have to go out and get the shed. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't stop the transportation and the rental return process. Right. Whether it's voluntarily or involuntarily, you can't really stop it. So, maybe that's the disruption that's needed, is a rent-to-rent process that can be perfected. My thought seems to be, maybe it's too big, but it's to combat the dealer premium, which supposedly is not a good idea, as I hear it said. And then, but how do you do that? Because that those percentages create loyalty, and then that's also it's very cumbersome because like if it's a dealer who's purchasing wholesale and retailing, they get offered those premiums.
Yeah.
But then if it's a manufacturer, they might get that. So then many dealers don't know that there's manufacturers that get those premiums, and several of them might quit listening if I mention that here today. But it's okay to talk about difficult things. I don't think you're giving away any special information. Those dealers, and I would just like to tell those dealers, like, I don't think that the dealers, unless you own your inventory, deserves any of that premium. So it really doesn't matter what the company's taking, because they're providing you, if you're a consignment person, they're giving you $100,000, $200,000 worth of free inventory. I just spoke at Atlee Stewart's dealer day, and I mentioned that, in my speech to the dealers. It's one of the only industries that you can get $100,000 or $200,000 worth of free inventory brought to you without a floor plan, and in most cases have limited accountability.
Yeah.
If you sell, $2 million that month, you'll get paid for that. But if you don't sell anything, there's limited liability or accountability in most cases.
Yeah. 100%.
Hello, Shed Sellers. Did you get a chance to view the Real Work Labs interview featuring George Converse? If not, be sure to check out the episode, where you can see a condensed demo during the interview. Just go to the Shed Geek Podcast YouTube channel and type in Real Work Labs. George and the team at Real Work Labs have received an influx of interest and new signups, and they are already working to provide real results. Real Work Labs shapes the way customers find you online. We are a software company that helps shed sellers like you get found where the customers live, not where your shed lot is. Our mobile app in the field hooks into your website, so your work and Google reviews are getting found on the map on location. That way, you drive more revenue, higher conversion rates, and true word-of-mouth referrals online. It's time to put your reviews on the map and leave a digital yard sign at your job sites using Real Work Labs. For more information, just go to shedgeek.realworklabs.com or simply call or text 480-787-7575. Mention the Shed Geek Podcast for special pricing and get a 50% discount on setup today.
I mean, the manufacturers who are doing consignment are already doing you a great favor. So I think it comes down to education for the dealers. I think that's why we talked about, creating a shed event for specifically the dealers. That seems to be on hold for the moment.
Do you think the majority of sale lots are consignment based, from a manufacturer? Is that from your experience? Do you think
the majority?
Yeah.
So it's probably territorial. In the New England areas, it seems like, especially around Lancaster up into New York, and that most folks are purchasing their inventory and then retailing it. Some of them will pull several, one driver together for several units. Some of them will own their own truck and trailer and process. In the Midwest, especially some of the really large big box stores, majority of those seem to be consignment. I think that it can be good, but I think it can also, because it can expand your product, but it can also be bad if the dealer's not heavily vetted. Unfortunately, like I know guys that sell sheds that are just like, sure, I'll sell you a shed if you want one.
Yeah.
So for them to actually understand the rent-to-own process and the legal implications of it and how they should be selling it, like calling it finance or, I'm sure we could get into the state statutes of just how deep it would go and how they're all different. So yeah, I would say the majority, yes, but I don't know the answer to that, to be fair.
Yeah, I'm just curious as far as how that all kind of
What's your experience with your company? Like I'm asking you on air, so you don't have to share that.
No, I think I would agree. I think we mainly see dealers who are set up on a consignment basis, and oftentimes their manufacturer that they work with have a rent-to-own partnership with a company, and that just kind of shuffles down to each dealer that uses their buildings. So, I mean, yeah, a lot of times that's kind of hard to acquire those types of lots. But there are still many lots that don't have the consignment basis or are on consignment but don't have as much oversight as far as rent to own. So
I would think even in those consignment lots, unless it's vertically integrated, which I'm a fan of vertical integration where you can do everything in-house. If it wasn't vertically integrated and you didn't do an internal rent-own system and driving and delivering and selling and everything, I would think that if you opened up the opportunity for those dealers to seek out their own RTO provider and even see rewards from that RTO provider, I think you could get a more dedicated dealer, but also think that you would have to have rent-owned companies that do some pretty ambitious training, because they need to understand. And shoppers are impulsive, and a lot of times you just don't have the opportunity, or at least I didn't, to sit down and walk them through it. Dylan used to make fun of me all the time because he's like, you turn into a financial advisor, a dad, a coach, you know what I mean? Like all of these things. And I was like, well, man, I just, I have to sleep at night, and some people sleep easier than I do.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure that I've done the right thing. So I used to always say I wasn't the best salesperson because I didn't just sell.
Yeah.
For me, it was maybe more about the education and the process and making sure they understood and had conviction, no buyer's remorse, and understood their contract. And even if you try to do that with some customers, they're so impulsive. You can talk and they're just like, they're not listening.
I think there's even room to grow for RTO companies to do better at that, because the first contact is going to be with a dealer, a salesman, and they should have a desire and they take on responsibility to educate the customer as much as possible. But even say the customer does sign a contract on that day, it's going to be typically several weeks before a building is delivered. And if the rent-own companies are receiving that customer's information, they are given ample opportunity to do their best to make sure that customer understands what they have signed and give them the opportunity to back out if they so desire. I don't even think we do good a job at that, and I think I've seen it in other companies that don't do as great a job at that.
I've interviewed someone even recently who said, seeing buildings that go out that have made the down payment but never another payment, or one or two payments and then never another. And I think to myself, like, I might be missing the mark here, but did they not have all the information? Yeah. Something missed in the process. Was the sale rushed for the purpose of getting the commission? I'm not saying it is, so I wouldn't accuse anybody of anything. I'm trying to figure it out like everyone else. I'm trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together in the dark, basically, and figure out why this situation, what can we do to help. Some things just happen because they just happen, you know what I mean? But if they're happening quite often, it's more about following the pattern and figuring out where the breakdown is in the process. If we're just out to collect as much money as we possibly can, then me personally, and I can't ask others to do that, but I have to check my personal conscience and convictions with that process. Whereas, I want to make money, but then I also want to feel good about the way I make it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Anyway, this conversation, I felt like this is a conversation that typically me and you might have off air. I kind of find it interesting that it somehow made it on air. I told you it goes by fast whenever you get in a deep conversation, and there's just stuff that you can talk about. I hope the audience, if they hear this message, this podcast today, takes away from it, what you said, the stirring, you know what I'm saying, and the disruption in the status quo, and knowing that there's not, at least there's no conversation here today that I feel like that we're attempting to do to tear apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
But rather to challenge and to talk about difficult conversations and difficult things. And these are things that I haven't always been real crazy about touching, because I don't want to be the Shed Geek Podcast controversial guy that's asking questions that put people on the hot spot. You know, I'm wanting to build up the industry, have conversations that continue to build it up. And I don't know about you, but I know my marriage has been better through me and my wife having difficult conversations. You know, my faith has been made stronger by challenging myself or being challenged from even my pastor to think about more in-depth conversations. So for those that would see it as anything other than that, you know, my apologies, and we'll say a silent prayer. Outside of that, you know, I love the idea of disruption and conversation that evolves itself around that. And I'm sorry I took too much mic time. I hope, you know, I want to make sure I interviewed you here today.
No, I appreciate it. I'm always love to hear what you have to say about different different things. So don't mind at all.
Well, maybe next time we'll get an interview in with you. Anything that you want to share with the audience? Anything that's left on your heart today, or?
Yeah, just as you touched on, I mean, that you'll hear me say all these ideas and quote unquote disruptions and new products. I think that should come about. I mean, I think those changes are needed and they're good, and I think they'll challenge the industry as a whole. But I am deeply appreciative of what has already been set in place and what the industry has given me and provided for my family and all. There's a lot of good that comes from what is already in place, so I just would appreciate that. And then and just if there's any companies or dealers that are looking for a rent-to-own service, obviously we are happy to have that discussion with them. And if there's anyone that's curious about new ideas, I'm always open to those conversations as well. You can just shoot me an email or give me a text or a call. I'd love to have those.
What's a good number and email?
Email is jlepage, Lepage, at stayathomestorage.com. And my phone number is 513-518-7414.
Excellent, man. Well, hope your heart's clear. Mine is. It's a good conversation today. Yeah, this sounds a lot like a conversation me and you have or would have on the phone a couple of times already about processes and different things and trying to watch where it's going. I mean, even accessory buildings, I mean, I've been trying to figure out that angle with, how many shed guys. I mean, I drove up here today and I was talking about my buddy Darren, I mean, he's like I don't know, at least at one point he was like a number one dealer, playset dealer for I think like Hirschberger Lawn Structure. So I mean, he's killing it. I talked to him on Rent-On years ago, and he's just out here doing all these things complement the sheds, accessory buildings, and you're seeing furniture on every lot. I stopped at a few of them on the way up. You're seeing, everybody selling steel tube buildings anymore. So it's trying to figure out what that looks like. And thanks for the shout outs for all the companies that you did talk about. Several of them do or have advertised with me, and I'm encouraging people to continue to consider advertising here at Shed Geek Podcast. I just want to do a quick plug there real quick to remind people that we are seeing about 1,000 listeners and views a week between YouTube and between all the directories that go out from Buzzsprout, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeart, Pandora, Bullhorn, and more. But then also the landline for the Plain communities that call in, where we're actually able to manage and see that about 400 a week call in. So we're excited about that, and it seems to be growing. And appreciate the emails, the feedback, all of that. So if you're an advertiser of a product or service in the shed industry or shed-related accessory building in some way, feel free to reach out to me. We do have a email news blast that goes out to over, I think, around 3,500 people a week now that we can put ads in, and then also do commercials. And happy to talk to you about that for this year and next. Managing your marketing dollars is some of the hardest things to do, is figuring out how many people saw your ad. So by being able to do that, I feel pretty confident that we can at least get your company in front of people, and we can stay top of mind for those that they're already aware of. So that's my little plug. That's my little money maker.
Sounds great.
That's my income stream there, Justin. So Hey, listen, man, I appreciate you being on here today. I want to continue to build relationship with you. I appreciate that we've done that over the last year and a half or so. I'd like to pray kind of over your company and the industry here when we close, but just a personal note, just thank you. I appreciate your ambition and your approach, and I like that you're somebody's going to call you the disruptor. You better look out. You're going to get yeah. It's scary sometimes how quick those things unravel. But I appreciate your heart, and I know where it's at, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to interview you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Dear God, thank you for just this opportunity. Thank you for a chance to speak about business and our daily life and all those things that vehicles that you've given us as avenues for employment and also avenues for friendship and community and building a sense of friendship and challenging our own thoughts and with others that see things differently and have different ideas. I'm thankful for that, and just want to continue to keep my heart right and appointed at you and what you would have me do, and just ask that you would open up all the doors necessary to do those and close all the ones that are not. Ask you to do the same thing with Justin and his company today, that you'd bless his company, that you'd make it profitable, that you would give them good vision for where to step and when to step away. As you just watch over the whole community, the whole Shed community, keep everybody safe, and hope that we'll have a profitable and more than anything, a content 2023 as we move forward into the summer and fall. Thank you for everything. In Jesus' name,